I'm Victoria Jensen. I'm Transition Coordinator for the high school, and this is Barb Simon. She's the Director of Accessibility Resource Center at UWM, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And this is Heather Labecki. She is at MATC. She is a transition specialist there. First thing I want to tell you is that there's a transition representative at every university. And students may choose to disclose if they have a disability or not. They don't have to. But if they disclose, they will get help. Students will be provided with reasonable accommodations, but not modifications. In high school, middle school, elementary school, students with disabilities may get modifications where they'll cut an assignment in half or give them every other one. But when you work on a job, your assignment is not cut in half. And same as college. Nothing gets cut in half. There's no modifications in college. However, there are accommodations, and the accommodations are designed to level the playing field, to give students an opportunity to succeed instead of in high school, elementary, middle school, you're under the law of IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But after that, you're under ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act. So accommodations that you might receive are extra time on tests, or tests in a separate environment, a note taker, getting the notes or PowerPoint ahead of time from the professor. Those are the type of things that you might receive in college. The IEP is not part of college, although the IEP is used to determine what accommodations you'll need in college. So if you get extra time on tests and assistive technology in high school, the college representatives will meet with you before you go to college, usually before your placement tests or before you start college, and they'll ask you if you use that assistive technology. And if the student says, no, I don't, then that's crossed off. They'll only give you what you use and what you need. Now, I'm the transition coordinator for Franklin Schools, and I will help people complete their accommodation forms. There's accommodation forms for every college, and I also will help complete a college application for students. On the college application, there is an essay that you usually have to do for some colleges, and during that essay, it would be a good time to disclose, if you choose to, that you have a disability, because that might show your motivation and your striving to pursue your goals and to persist despite possible barriers. But you will also accent in that essay your strengths. And then we also set up college tours for students at the high school. This Wednesday, we're going to MATC with a group of students. Heather is giving us a tour. We have specific tours for students with disabilities, specific college tours. UWM will have that later on this year. We'll be going to that. Whitewater will have a day like that. WCTC will have a day like that. And the University of Wisconsin Waukesha will also have a day like that. We'll offer that to the students to go on any or all of those tours. And then we'll also connect you to Student Services we'll tell you when the open houses are. A lot of times there's open houses at the colleges on Saturdays. Also, Student Services will invite colleges here, so a student doesn't have to miss school to meet with a college representative. Almost every day there's a college here at Student Services that your son or daughter can talk to. And then they also have university tours set up through Student Services. This is my email if you have any questions. This is my phone number. My prep period is 4 o'clock every day, and I can usually be reached after 1:30. I'm also able to take students to job shadows and job experiences to help them determine their preferences and interests in relation to college. Now, this is Barb Simon. She's the director of the Accessibility Resource Center, and she's going to talk about UWM.
I'll stand up, then I can see my slides, and I get to stretch a little. Hopefully, So I like to give you an idea of the range of disabilities that we work with on college campuses. Sometimes people think of disabilities as a a physical disability is a person that uses a wheelchair, maybe has a cane. But the majority of students that we work with, and probably the same at METC and other schools, most of the students have what we consider invisible disabilities or hidden disabilities. And they're things like different psychological conditions, depression, anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, students with learning disabilities, you can't really see that, different chronic health conditions, things like cancer, Crohn's disease, diabetes. Most of the disabilities that we work with, probably upwards of 90 to 95% are invisible. So it's a big, big range. Any student that comes into our office with any kind of disability, we provide services to them. If it represents an impairment to one or more of life's major activities, and in this case it's usually the activity of learning or remembering or concentrating in the case of attention deficit disorder. So this is the range. At UWM we happen to have a very big deaf and hard of hearing program. We probably have about, maybe 50 or so students who are deaf and hard of hearing. We have on our staff 10 interpreters and captionists, and we're very lucky to have that many. The range of psychological disabilities is big, and that is a big portion of the students that we work with, and that's growing on college campuses really across the country. We have lots of students with learning disabilities, hundreds of students with attention deficit disorder, and growing numbers of students with autism spectrum disorder. When I started 18 years ago, we didn't have one student in the department with a diagnosed disability of autism spectrum disorder. And now we probably have 50 to 60, and there's lots of students that don't really report that. We only the students that come to our office do we know about, but some students, they don't really need services, even though they have a disability, so they just kind of manage school on their own without using too much of anything, but that doesn't mean. They say general statistics are really 10%, they estimate 10% of students on a college campus have a disability. But our numbers are actually much lower than that. Vicki kind of talked a little bit about, it's very important for parents and for students to understand that the rules change a little bit from high school to college because they're covered by two different laws. IDEA is really what protects students who are in grade school, middle school, high school, and that says that students are eligible for a free and appropriate public education. Now we all know that college is not free, and everyone is not entitled to go to college because you have to take a test to get in and be admitted. So you can see that the rules change, and that's because the laws change. In college, students are covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act that says essentially that we cannot discriminate against people that have disabilities, and they're covered by Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And there's a whole bunch of differences, and I guess I spent a few slides on these differences because it can be a little bit shocking for parents and students when they get to college, when they find out, oh, I can't get something that I used to have before, or we do it differently now. So these are some of the things that are different. Colleges and universities aren't required to provide aids or devices for personal use. So for example, sometimes in high school, students that might have a very significant physical disability, they might have an aid that goes with them from class to class, even helps them organize their stuff, sometimes even carries their things. At the college level, the student would be responsible for that. The college or university is not responsible for providing that. Personal devices, things like an assistive listening device, we might provide that, but other devices, I'm trying to think of an example. I guess technically we don't have to provide a smart pen, although we do provide smart pens in some cases, but that it's not required that colleges and universities do that. Entitlement ends because of course all students can go to high school and middle school, but in college you have to take an entrance exam. At MATC, WCTC, there are even specific exams called the Accuplacer, and I think WCTC has a different.
The Compass?
Oh yeah, the Compass exam, so you guys know all those names. The ACT, right, most students take to come to UWM. But that's kind of the qualifying part. You have to be qualified in order to get in. And one of the big differences is up up until they graduate from high school, part of the responsibility of the school is to identify a student with a disability. But once they've graduated, then the student has to self-identify. So that means they have to walk into our offices and say, I have a disability and I'm going to need some accommodations, and here's what I think I'm going to need. So it very much, the responsibility changes from the school to the student, because now they're an adult, and there are expectations that they understand what they need. One of the big differences is that the law that covers IDEA that covers students when they're in high school kind of says that schools can do whatever they need to do to help that student be successful. So if the student needs an aid, they're going to give them that. If they need a calculator, they're going to give them that. If they need notes for their exam, if that's going to help you be successful, we'll give you that too. In college, we don't do it that way. Because the law doesn't say we have to provide success. The law says we have to provide access. We have to open up the doors and make sure everybody has a chance. But just like students who don't have a disability, students with disabilities also can fail, right? Failing is part of life for all of us. And so we don't guarantee success, just like it's not guaranteed for any other student. We try to guarantee access, we try to level the playing field, but I was talking to an OT class, a class of new OT students, and I was talking a little bit about leveling the playing field.
What's OT?
I'm sorry, occupational therapy.
Okay.
Some new students who are, kind of freshmen in this occupational therapy program, they come and they talk to us in our office, and I mentioned level the playing field, and then I had to tell them, we talk about leveling the playing field, but really and truly, it might never be level, depending what that student's disability is, and we try as much as we can to provide access and to make things level, but life isn't necessarily fair or level, but we do the best that we can to make it as level as it can be. But we also acknowledge the reality that it doesn't always work that magical way that we think it will. Then after that, the rest of that slide said after access is provided, it's up to the student, the success part. But we want to make sure that they have the access to it. And there's two different kinds of access, really. There's physical access, which means if I use a wheelchair, I need to be able to get into that room. If there are stairs, if there are steps, if there's no elevator, you cannot have that class in that room. And we will change the room to make sure that that student can physically be there. Programmatic access is really a little bit what's more common and what we spend a lot of our time working on, is making sure that the student has access to the material, to the notes, to the website, and that might mean they have a note taker, because we need to make sure that they have access to the notes. We want to make sure that they have access to the exam. So if the student has a visual impairment, they have to have large print. Maybe they have to listen to the exam, but that's what the programmatic access is. Access to the books. So, and that is by far, it's easy to change a classroom, pretty easy. But to make sure that there's programmatic access, that can be more complex and sometimes requires more technology. But we're really fortunate because the technology has changed so much. Back when I started, we were still tape recording books, and we had like 50 volunteers that tape recording books. And now, of course, the technology has changed so much, they can just listen to it on the computer, and the publishers send us the books, and it's all, it's much easier. So what we need to do is, I said all the differences and the things we don't do. We don't change the program, but there's lots of things that we do. We provide accommodations to make sure that the student has equal access. So we make some adjustments. For example, the student might use Braille or electronic text to make sure that they can read the book, or they can listen to the book. And then there's a whole bunch of other accommodations. Here's some more examples. For example, deaf and hard of hearing students, they might use interpreters. That's what C-print is, a type of captioning. They might use interpreters on Braille, accessible buildings, chairs, modifications. And there's one that says modifications in attendance. Sometimes students with particularly some psychological disabilities or some severe chronic health impairments, sometimes with cancer, if they've had chemotherapy or something, they might not be able to attend class that day or even the next day, so we might loosen up their attendance requirements, or they might get some due date extensions for their work or for an exam if they have to miss it. But that is an accommodation that we look at very carefully because it can also get the student into deep trouble. And of course, everybody thinks that they want flexible attendance and flexible due dates. Who wouldn't, right? But it really doesn't help students in many cases, so we have to keep it under very tight control. Otherwise, it just helps the students to kind of get into a very hairy mess toward the end of the semester. Priority registration, it works a little bit different at every school. Priority registration means you get to register first, but at UWM, you need a specific disability-related reason why you would need that. Some schools, every student with a disability gets it, but we don't do it that way. And then these are very common accommodations. Note takers are very common. They're really the most second common accommodation. At UWM, a note taker is another student. They're taking the class just like you are, but they share their notes with you. Usually they take notes and they probably email them to you. We do have smart pens, which are now available at most colleges, but at UWM, we encourage you to try it if you want to, and then you go and buy one of your own if you like it. A smart pen is a pen with a special notebook that it records the teacher's lecture as you're taking your notes. And if you put the pen down, the pen and the notebook know what the teacher has said at that moment, because say the teacher's talking too fast or you miss some of it. If you put the pen down, it will say what the teacher said, so you can fill in your notes, and you can also hook it up to your computer, and then it does all these great things. It's really, really great. Scan materials, supportive. At UWM and many schools that have enough staff, some of our students we meet with once a week, and we kind of talk about how each class is going. Some students we work with time management, organization, getting things done. Do you need to go see a tutor? But that's once a week. It's not as much as maybe they were getting in high school, where sometimes maybe they go to their resource room teacher once a day. I don't know how often students go, but in college, students are really much very independent. And to come and see us. No one can make a student come and see us, not even their parents, and believe me, parents try. Because the student is really the person in the end that's doing the work. As much as the moms and dads might want them to do it, get it done, without that student doing it, the mom and dad being there is limited in usefulness unless they're really working with the student to get the work done.
But if they want to meet with that person more often, it's possible. It's not like you only allow one.
No, not too often. I wouldn't say we wouldn't do it more than once a week, depending on the student. And usually even that once a week, that is usually at the beginning of their college career, and then they kind of wean themselves off of us as they get going. They decide, I don't need to see her so often, now I'm good every 2 weeks. If a student really needed it, we would meet with them a little bit more often, but not once a day. But maybe, and I've done it.
It's a real tough course. You're taking a calculus class. You might need more than once a week to say, I need some help with some of this.
With that, if it's a content specific, we would make sure that they go to tutoring. And then I would tell the student, you can go to walk-in tutoring, you can get weekly tutoring, and you can go to your professor's office hours. I would tell them, do all of those. You use every resource you can. The interesting thing that is one of the many things that's different now than when I was in school is now, to be a good student, it's really expected you use all of the resources. Like I have a tutoring slide a little bit later, and I tell all of my students, tutoring is for the smart students. You pay for it with tuition. It's included. You pay for all of it. Whether you ever go to see one tutor, I promise you're paying for all of it. So make your life easier and go to tutoring. I promise you will get better grades. So now, college is different because there's so many resources, because we want students to be successful. So I encourage, when I meet with students, I look at their class list with them, and I look at the tutoring schedule, and I go, oh, there's a tutor for English, and I can't make them do it, but I say, oh, you can get a tutor for English. Here's the schedule. Oh, you have history 151? They have tutoring for 151. And we have this other kind of tutoring, it's called supplemental instruction. It's very, very cool. There's a tutor that actually attends the lecture with all, they're in there with all of the students, and then they hold review sessions, usually 4 or 5 times a week. So that student can not only go to class, they can go to that supplemental instruction section 5 times a week, and for those classes they can usually get a small group tutoring, which is a group of 5 or less. So I mean the amount of support, and that is available not for every class, but for difficult classes like anatomy and physiology, chemistry, calculus. So schools have a lot available, but the key is the student has to walk through the door. And yeah, that is the key. But the great thing is once students try it, like the tutoring, they love it. And I'll meet with them the next semester and I'll start talking about tutoring. They'll be like, Barb, no, I'm already signed up. Because, now they're a believer. But it's a little tricky with students because they, in high school, they think, oh, it's the kids not getting it. Mom, I don't know my French, so it's like I'm not, but in college it's different. It's you're smart, and the tutors use tutors. It changes, and until they get that, they're really not quite on board with it. They think I must be the dumb one because I need a tutor, but it's not about needing, it's more about wanting. Yeah. But anyway, okay, I got sidetracked with the tutoring thing because you can say I'm a believer. But so anyway, to get accommodations, and we did talk about, I'll just let Heather talk about the alternative testing accommodation. Most of the things that I talk about, they apply whatever school. If the student goes to UCLA, Marquette, MATC, doesn't matter. All of these accommodations are available at any school that a student would go to. It's just, it might work a little bit differently at each one, but the actual accommodations are there. But in order to get accommodations, it's very important to remember you must share with the school documentation of the disability, because no accommodations without documentation. And we're generally looking for something kind of current. The burden is on the student to provide it. So in the past I've had students say, well, you can call my doctor, or you can, no, it doesn't work that way. You bring it to me. That's the way that it works. We might send a fax if to the school, but generally, so you need to bring that disability documentation to us, and then we'll review it, and we'll meet with you, and we'll come up with an accommodation plan. The documentation should be somewhat new, especially in the case of a psychological disability, because those can change very quickly. Medicines can change quickly. Documentation for a learning disability, we like it to be within 3 years old, especially the achievement testing part. For ADHD, lots of schools have forms on their website for the doctor to fill out. It gives us all the information that we know, and it's current, it's easy to do. You can just print it off the website. But it all depends on the disability. For chronic health conditions, we have a different form for that, and another school might have a form for that. Always check the websites, because that is where you'll get the most current information. So this is just more about, especially learning disabilities. The IEP, we use it to support a student's request, but it's generally not enough. And we also take into consideration the student's history and what they tell us they've been using and what they think they need. We put a significant weight on what that student is saying. Here's what I've used in the past. This is what I think will help me. Sometimes what happens is students haven't used much in the past. They don't want to. They don't want to be a part of that whole thing. But things can change in college because of the reading requirements, because of the speed of things, and some students find that even though they didn't use much in high school, they do need it in college, and then they can come to us at any point. We cannot arbitrarily cut anything off. So we have students in a 16-week semester. We always have students that come in week 15. Now, that doesn't mean we can accommodate them in week 15 when finals are the following week. But we'll try the best we can. Because you also have to give us enough time to accommodate you. So it's always good to do things in advance, as you can imagine. I don't recommend that, but the point is we can't cut you off. I had one time a student, it was actually very, very sad. She was a senior in a business major, which is kind of a hard major. They take accounting and some tough classes. Second semester, senior year, she finally was coming to me and saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were here. I need more time on my tests. I have severe ADHD. And on the bottom of the syllabus for each instructor's class, it says, if you need disability accommodations, contact me or go to the Accessibility Resource Center. And she said, you know what? I didn't know that meant me. Because students with attention deficit disorder do not think of themselves as having a disability. So here all this time, and she could have gotten through much quicker. She was repeating classes, doing things over, because sometimes it doesn't go well when you have ADHD and you're missing things, you're missing the notes, you're distracted in the tests. So, but that's what I mean by you can come to us anytime, but the sooner the better, because she probably would have saved herself thousands of dollars by not retaking classes and getting services a little quicker. It's such an easy thing to do. All she really needed was test accommodations, and that's so easy to do.
I've got a question about, you said the IEP they don't really use for college, but yet they'll use some of the information. How recent should that be? Like how, we've had a couple, at least my son already. How current should that be prior to going?
They redo it every year.
Not every year?
Not all the testing, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because what happens a lot of times with the IEP is they talk about a reevaluation, but they're kind of just reevaluating the old test results. And so I've seen students with the test results from 3rd grade or 5th grade, and now the student is in college. So that, you can imagine, is not very useful. I have no clue how they are reading and writing now. So that's why if you can get the school to do an updated, even brief new achievement testing, the Woodcock-Johnson Test of Achievement, even if the resource room teacher does it or the LD teacher does it, doesn't even have to be the school psychologist. Now, and I'm just saying from UWM, other schools might want more, but just so that we can see how is the student functioning now, and then we can see, do they need to listen to their books? Because we might recommend that even though the student hasn't used it in the past. Sometimes we recommend things they've never used, and now they can try it and see if they might really like it. But I would recommend at least updated achievement. IQ not so important, but achievement testing, very helpful.
Is that what it's called, achievement test, or different vernacular?
They're all different types of achievement tests, but there's one that is very typically used, and it's called the Woodcock-Johnson Test of Achievement Revised 3rd or whatever it is.
Right.
And that you take your senior year.
You can take it any time, but you want more recent results.
Okay.
So you want the re-eval done with the Woodcock-Johnson, or the teacher to do the Woodcock-Johnson junior or senior year of high school.
Okay.
That is helpful. If it hasn't been done within, and usually they just don't do that much testing anymore.
Yeah.
Right, Vicki, what you say? I mean, most schools they just really want to avoid, because what they say is, well, the student still needs it, and of course they do, but it's very hard when they get to us to tell us they still need it, but we don't know where you're functioning. So, yeah. And then if they need to take any sort of high stakes test like teacher tests or something, then for sure they absolutely would need that. Otherwise, you have to go pay for a new evaluation, which can be thousands of dollars. Okay, am I pretty close to done? Because we got to get done.
Yeah.
Sometime. This is a good slide though. Successful students. 2 very important things. Really good self-advocates and know how to talk to their teachers, because the way that it works is the students meet with us and we do an accommodation plan. There's no more IEP. And unlike the IEP, which is many, many pages, the accommodation plan is 1 page. The student takes it to their teacher and shares it with the teacher, says, here's what I'm going to need in your class. That accommodation plan does not say what the student's disability is. The student does not have to disclose that to a teacher, only to me. But they need to be able to say, I'm going to need more time on tests in this class, how do you want to arrange that? It's a very business-like interaction, and teachers are very good, they're very used to it. But the student has to be able to say that and make that effort to arrange it. They have to be able to do it in advance. So talking to your teachers, that's something that students should practice in high school. If they know how to do that, it will be so much better for them. willing to use resources like tutoring, stuff like that.
Oh, sorry.
I think he's trying to cut me off.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, but the
Well, that's
tutoring,
enough.
okay, I already gave you way too much information. And this is just about admissions. There's a UW system application, they fill that out. Nowhere on the application does it ask about disability, that's an illegal question, but you can, there's two different opportunities to say something. There's a part that says, tell us more about yourself, or is there anything else you'd like us to know? That's where you can disclose disability, but you also want to say things like why you would be a great contributor to this campus. What do you have to offer this campus? So maybe it's your talent in music, or maybe you're an artist, or an athlete, or a great volunteer, or you've been working at the food pantry. I mean, it could be, or you have an interest in horses, or I mean, whatever it is. Say why you would make a great contribution to the campus, and you can talk about your disability and say, math is really hard for me, but I work extra hard in English and I overcame a lot. But you have to say, because that admissions person is looking for why should we admit this person? Not just that you have a disability and yeah, we want to be diverse and all that, but what can you offer those people in your classes to contribute to add value.
Thank you so much, Barb. Now Heather from MATC, the transition specialist,
Yes.
will present.
So hi, my name is Heather Rebecki. I'm a transition specialist with MATC. So it's my job to help students upfront in the process of becoming a student at MATC. So I help with the application process. I help them applying for accommodations, making sure that we have the appropriate documentation of disability on file. And I also approve accommodations for our entrance exam, which is called the AccuPlacer, and proctor that exam with accommodations. And I do that at 3 campuses, and I have a counterpart who does that at the other campus. My office is downtown, but I also see students at our Oak Creek and West Dallas campuses. So we have the 4 different locations. You can just keep it here. But and each campus is a little different. Each campus has different programs and some specialty programs that go along with each campus. But it's important to know what type of environment you want to attend school, what works the best for you. A larger campus, which obviously our downtown campus is our large campus, and then our outlying campuses are smaller campuses. So some students really like being on a smaller campus. We have a lot of different programs, over 170 different programs, and we have 3 different types of degrees at METC. So we have a short-term certificate that's about a semester
Good evening.
long.
At 8 p.m., the inaugural Pathways to Your Future night will be ended. Please make sure to fill out our survey to give us your feedback and hand it to someone on your way out as you exit the building. Again, at 8 p.m., Pathways to Your Future will be over. Please make sure you give us your feedback. Thank you for your attendance, and go Sabres.
We also have a technical diploma, which is a 1-year degree, typically 2 semesters, and we have a 2-year associate's degree. Some people will come and get their associate's degree with METC and then transfer on to UWM or other colleges and universities. We can skip this slide. So, a lot of what I'm going to say echoes what Barb already said, but there's different laws that govern the type of education that must be provided to students depending on their age. So in high school and primary school, the law says that you're entitled to a free and appropriate public education. Once you're in post-secondary, the law says that you must provide equal access through reasonable accommodations. And so what that means exactly is that by identifying that you have a disability and providing us with the documentation needed to support that disability, we will provide appropriate and disability related accommodations in order to help you be successful and level that playing field. So I'm part of our student accommodations department. Every college or university has a different name for it. So at UWM is the Accessibility Center. At METC, it's the Student Accommodation Services Office. We have offices at all 4 campuses. So again, I help people up front in the process, and then once you become a student at METC, we have a whole staff of people that work in our offices called disability specialists, and they'll work with you while you're in your program to make sure that those accommodations are working for you. And they're also a great resource. So they don't necessarily work as regular tutors for students, but many students will come, utilize our accommodation centers, utilize our computers there, the quiet space to study, the staff that we have, to run questions past and get help with their homework and projects. So accommodations must be requested. So like Barb mentioned before, we're not going to know that you have a disability unless you tell us that we have a disability. Another important thing is that I meet with many students who don't know what their disability is, and they can't name the disability. So we have to go through a series of conversations, and I have to look at their information on their IEP, and we figure that information out together. But it's very important that you're able to tell someone and tell the appropriate people what your disability is and what your needs are. And that's something that you can start practicing in high school when you participate in your IEP meetings and you meet with your transition coordinator to be able to start getting used to talking about things in those types of terms. You'll have to excuse me, I've been doing a lot of presenting and I think my voice is going. So the IEP on its own is not enough. So we require documentations from a physician, psychiatrist, or a psychologist. And depending on the disability, we require different types of documentation. So for a learning disability or a cognitive disability, we're going to require a psychological report. For behavioral health disabilities, we require documentation from this physician, psychiatrist, or psychologist that contains a diagnosis. Preferably, we'd like to see a psychological evaluation. And for physical disabilities, we require documentation from a physician. And all of that documentation needs to support what you're requesting from us as far as accommodations are concerned. So here's some examples, and Barb went through a lot of different examples. One thing that people are always surprised about is that a calculator is considered an accommodation. You have to have a disability at METC, you have to have a disability in the area of math, a learning disability in that area, or you have to show evidence in your IEP that you're allowed to use a calculator in high school in order for us to approve that accommodation for you. And I think that Barb discussed most of the examples of accommodations that we can provide, but I will work with you up front in order to identify what accommodations might be most helpful and appropriate for you, and then we have an instructor coordinator who will work with you with your program accommodations and talk to you about what we can provide for you for your classes. So in order to begin the process of becoming a student at METC, you want to complete our online application, submit your official high school transcripts, and then you want to apply for accommodations and submit the appropriate documentation. We want to have those 3 things in place. I proctored the entrance exam for students who are approved for accommodations. So it tests students in the area of reading, language, and math. Or students are also invited to submit their ACT scores. Some students will submit their ACT scores and they won't meet our requirements. So then they'll come to me and take the AccuPlacer and see how they score on the AccuPlacer. So we have minimum requirements for the AccuPlacer or our ACT scores. However, if a student does not meet the minimum requirement in one or more areas, we have classes in our pre-college, our school pre-college, and they're skill building classes, so they'll help students gain some additional skills before they're fully admitted into their program. And again, One, then you also want to apply for financial aid as early as possible. There's federal and state grants that some students may qualify for. And state grants, there's a finite amount of money that the state can provide for students in the form of grants. So the earlier you could apply for financial aid, the better chance that you have of qualifying for those grants. And we all know any money that you don't have to pay back for your education, the better. So I have business cards and information on the back table, so you know how to contact me if you're interested in METC.
And so do I, and there's also brochures from UWM back there, so thank you so much for your time.